Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of What If Operation Unthinkable was attempted. So, as we saw last episode, it's Boxing Day, the day that the Soviet Union started to fall in our timeline. Boxing Day 1991. Except, in this universe, is marked by East Indonesia invading East Timor. The Indians are not having it. And so, this leads to a war between India and China. India will drop the first bombs. They nuke the crap out of China and their puppets, with their nukes even entering the Soviet Union. The Soviets see nukes. They assume they must be the US. They nuke the US too. The US nukes them back, and suddenly, a nuclear carpet coats the world. South America is the only continent with no nukes dropped. And even then, it's very barely. So yeah, the world has been nuked. All of this nuclear activity will start World War IV. China will start to invade into India in their African colonies. Meanwhile, the Indians will start to invade into East Indonesia and Vietnam. What was I on about again? Oh yeah, the Soviets call all their puppets into the war. And the US, along with the forces of the fascists, will start to attack into Soviet America? Soviet Africa. The European front will stand still. Actually, will it? No. The Soviets will start an invasion into Turkey. Ultimate Yugoslavia will start a push into Istanbul. The United Kingdom countries will start to attack Ireland. Sweden will be left alone after being completely nuked. The USSR will start to be kicked out of Alaska. But the Central Americans will start to push into Mexico. The US will make naval landings in Cuba. And so, the World War has begun. China starts to move in Southeast Asia and practically has the West Indonesians capitulated. The Indians start to attack into Iran. However, the Soviets push them back in Afghanistan. The US starts to push into the Iraqi puppet of the Chinese. The Soviets are pushed back in the east of Turkey, but the Yugoslavs push straight in to the Bosphorus. The Bosphorus? Ireland will crumble. Sweden will be invaded and is basically on the brink of surrender. The Soviets will flood this front with troops, trying to use it as a distraction from the Americans. The Americans will regain ground in South America, and will defeat Cuba. Did anything actually? Okay, there's a... Sorry, guys. Okay, so Italy will start to push into the Yugoslav country, and Sweden will fall. Nothing much changes on the Southeast Asian front. The Indians push the Chinese back, I think, a little bit. No, they don't. They're just India. And yeah, most of the rest of the world stays normal. On the next layer, the Indonesians are pushed out of Papua New Guinea, but consolidate all of Indonesia. The Italians capitulate Soviet Egypt. And the US and Indian forces meet up, cutting off much of Soviet West Africa. The Spanish will then start to push south, and the Indians will start to push out their colony. The Yugoslavs will kick the Italians out in Albania. The Italians will start to roll straight through Slovenia, making landings in Dalmatia, I think, as well. The US will start to expand very much into Central America. However, will be defeated in Panama. However, the fronts in the north will be held off. On to the next layer. Okay. The Chinese will start an invasion in North Vietnam. So, Vietnam? Myanmar. And will start to push into South Viet. I just did it again, Myanmar. The Soviets will push back the Indians in Iran and will take over the US's military occupied section. This secures the Persian Gulf for the Chinese. The Indonesians will make a new landing into Papua New Guinea. Next, onto the African front. The Chinese will continue to push back the Indians. However, Soviet West Africa will capitulate to the United Front. United Front, bro? That sounds like the United Chinese Front, not gonna lie. In Turkey, the Soviets will push further west, and the Yugoslavs will leave to go fight the Italians. The Spanish will start a push into France in an attempt to defeat them. The Soviets will make massive pushes, landing into Quebec in the north of America. The Americans will nearly take out Central America. The Indians will kick the Chinese out of North Myanmar and will start to invade into them. And the Chinese will consolidate a front down here. The Soviets will push, I think, further west into Turkey. The Spanish will be pushed back in like this section of France, but will push back over here. In Africa, we see continued pushbacks from the Chinese, and in America, we see the Chinese, the Soviets start to link up their front, and the Central Americans being kicked into Panama. Next, the Chinese will start to push back this Indian front, costing thousands of lives, and will start to push over here towards Bangladesh. The Indians adopt a doctrine of they're not in actual India yet, so we're fine. They're in Myanmar and Bangladesh and Pakistan, not India. The Yugoslavs will make another landing into Turkey, and the Soviets will push up, meeting with them. The Italians will start to invade into... No, sorry, the Syrians will start to invade into Italy. And Italy will attack the Indian colonies, switching sides. At first, nothing will happen on the Spanish-Italian border. The Spanish will continue to push into France, and the Soviets are threatening to be capitulated in Africa. This pact is now starting to evacuate citizens into bunkers, afraid that a second wave of nukes will come. However, all nukes were destroyed in that one nuclear exchange. Otherwise, the entire world would just be green. And that wouldn't be a very fun scenario. So, yeah. Not much happens in America, except the Americans managed to kick them out of Quebec. The Soviets, out of Quebec. The Chinese will kick the Australians out of Papua New Guinea, and they will start to push into Myanmar, pushing the Indians practically out of their country. The Soviets will also start to push into the western part of Afghanistan and kick the Indians out of Iraq. Iran. I can't speak today. The Spanish will choose to side with the Americans and will start to invade into Italy. This infighting will not stop the Chinese from starting to push straight back into Italy, or the Soviets from making pushes in Africa. The US will start to make pushes back in the north, however they will have retracted practically all troops back to the US. Turkey will practically fall without the help of US troops. The Soviets will push back the Spanish as they focus in on Italy. Communist revolutions will start in the US colony as they want to be free from European white nationalists that are absolutely cooking, not gonna lie, that are basically colonizing them again. The Australians will start to be invaded by the Chinese fleet, and communist revolutions will happen in the west, as it is the much poorer side of Australia. The Chinese will also manage to seize Hawaii, but it is practically a nuclear wasteland by this point. The Americans will start to push back the Soviets even more, and will manage to push the Central Americans into their part of, Panama. So it's not really going to help them. Communist uprisings will start in Italy's colonies, as Italy definitely is starting to fall. The communists will rise up even more in US's African holdings, and the Soviets will start to push in. They would rather be under the Soviet rule than the US's. The communists in Australia would start to do even more, and the whatever this tip is of Australia will also fall to communist forces. The Soviets will also re-link up their two fronts up in the north. They will push into Iberia, but yeah. And the US will adopt that same doctrine that India has of they're in Canada, not in the USA. We are fine. Speaking of India, the Indians are just starting to get absolutely thrashed. So yeah, that happens. Next slide. The Chinese and Soviets will now start to come crashing in on India, and Australia is about to capitulate. The communist forces in Africa start to absolutely cook, and Italy is wiped out. The Soviet forces will start a push to Madrid, and while the Americans will manage to push back the Soviets and stop them from linking up, they will re-land into Quebec and Newfoundland. Australia will surrender. The Italian colonies will surrender over to the Soviets, and the communist uprisings will continue to happen down here in American Africa. The Americans will push into Alaska, but will definitely start to lose as Quebec is entirely captured by the Soviets. Indian guerrillas will start to pop up over here in China. However, none will pop up over here in Pakistan, as they would love to be their own independent country. India will start. The Soviets will start to push into India, and a communist rebellion will happen across the east, the poorer regions of India. Sri Lanka will also break free under communism. The African front will fall to communism as the Iberians surrender after Madrid is captured. I can't speak. The Soviets will make a landing into the other side of the St. Lawrence, and now the Americans are truly cooked. What actually changed on that slide? I'm confused. Oh, the African front completely falls to the Soviets. Like, what changed there? I'm so confused. Oh, right. The US starts to push back the Soviets in Quebec and the rest of Canada. Did I just ignore that? No. The Indians start to capitulate over to communism, but the US will start fighting harder than ever, trying to kick them out. India will fall to China. And so, now the US will start to fall. Communist rebellions will happen all across Central Asia and Cuba. The Chinese will start a landing into Baja California. The Soviets will re-push into land that they had owned for ages now. Well, not owned, but had occupied. The Soviets will continue to... Frodo, shut up! Shush! The Soviets will continue to push into the north of Canada. The Mexicans will rebel as a communist government on the Chinese side. The Chinese will capture LA. Well, actually, no, that's San Francisco. LA's like the other side, I think. Or I'm just being special. I don't know. Yeah. Canada will be restored as a Soviet puppet government, Mexico will become a Chinese puppet government. The South will start to rebel under just freedom. They just want to be free. And Central America will once again break free. The South Revolution will expand a lot, and the Soviets will push past the 49th parallel and capture Washington, I think, because it's like right there. Meanwhile, the Chinese will start to capitulate the East Coast. And so, the Soviets will conquer the USA. Winning the Cold War will be the side of communism. The peace treaty will look something like this. India will be broken up into many smaller states, slightly influenced by China, except for the People's Republic of India, which will be a Chinese puppet state, along with Sri Lanka. Vietnam will get all of Vietnam, Cambodia, and quite a bit of Thailand, I think, but I'm not 100% sure it's all of Thailand. No, it might. No, it's not all of Thailand. And then they will draw a line here, and the rest of that will be given to the Indonesians. The Australians will get to be their own communist government. In Europe, we see Spain get broken up, and Italy get broken up, with all of the states being Soviet occupied. The Yugoslav state will become more Soviet intertwined, and will gain Istanbul and the Bosphorus, renaming it to Constantinople. In Africa, the Chinese will get most of their way because the didn't do much. The Soviets. The Soviets will get big fat Egypt because Egypt has always been their colony. And the Chinese will get Ethiopia. Chinese will get the rest of Italian Libya, and the Soviets will get No, that border's meant to be there, but still. The Soviets will get Spanish Africa. Pretty much all of the rest of it goes to the Chinese. Now on to probably the most interesting treaty, the American Treaty. In this, Central America will be freed, and Cuba will gain all of the Bahamas. Bahamas? Caribbean. Well, they do get all of the Bahamas. I don't know why one of the islands is not islanding, but they do. But that wasn't the premise. And now it's not layer. Oh, wait, because I'm on the wrong layer. Right. Then, Mexico will be released with some American territory to compensate for the loss of the Yucatan Peninsula. They will be released as slightly Chinese influenced. The Soviets will get a puppet state in Canada that pushes down a lot and the Soviets will not let it be loosely influenced for fear that the US would rise again. The rest of the US would be divided in two because of the Southern Rebellion and people wishing to re-give the legacy of the US. The next event that will be happening is the Soviets will get to annex most of the former Iron Curtain countries. Oh, and they will get a little bit of Sweden, and Norway will get the rest. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. It was a bit of a long one, not gonna lie, and my voice is kind of dying. Oh, also I forgot to talk about Pakistan and Iran and stuff. Yeah, Pakistan will be a Soviet puppet. The Soviets will get to annex more of Afghanistan, and Iran will be unified. So will Turkey. The world has fell to communism. And yeah, the South Americans will be free, the Saudis will be free, and the South Africans will be free. Other than that, the entire world has fell to the communist threat. The red banner will fly over the world. But at what cost? You know? The world got absolutely bloody nuked into crap. It was nuked into oblivion. Okay? It was completely just boomed. And that is hell not good. So yeah. We'll see you in the next video. If you liked, if you enjoyed, not if you liked, if you enjoyed, can you leave a like and subscribe? Yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.